I was making a lot of money in sales, using that money to purchase more property.
Okay.
So anything that I made in real estate, I never spent it on me or anything. It was mainly back into acquiring more. Hey, I need to borrow money. How much money can you lend me? He goes, right now I'll give you whatever you want because nobody's I had a couple of houses that were paid off. I'm like, refi this. I accumulated about 1.8 million, and
Fernando David, a real good friend. You are a real estate agent, more than anything on the investment side.
Right.
You specializing on the short-term rental market. Own yourself more than 50 of those, in partnership more than 100. You have a management company that manage almost 200 properties. You are a Marine veteran and father, husband, and you manage to look like that, you know. Man, I wish to look like you at that age, man.
Dude, I physically, I may not look my age, but my body's beat up.
Really?
I've been,
really?
You know,
I mean, you worked out a lot, being a Marine, like you probably your entire life have been exposed to, you know, working out and exercising. So.
Yeah, physical fitness has been part of my life since I was a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been very active.
And I want to start there. Like, tell me a little bit about that beginnings. I know that you're original from Colombia. Were you born?
No. I'm from Puerto Rico.
You're from Puerto Rico?
I'm from Puerto Rico. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, in Bayamón. I lived for a short period of time. Well, not short period of time, but I lived, I would say, from 5 years old, I think, till 12. I lived in Chicago.
Okay.
And then I went with my family. My family moved back to Puerto Rico, where I went through. I don't know what they call it now. It was back then. It was junior high and high school.
Yeah.
And then I left. When I graduated high school, I was not a good student.
Really?
Right? School was definitely not for me.
Yeah.
I was always good, but my.
I could see that. I could see, you know, being able to stay quiet. And
I can't.
You can't. That's your energy.
So, and I started working. Like, I got my first job, like true job, and I lied about my age. Got my true job when I was 12.
Wow.
And so I've always working, and when I went to high school, I was working full time at Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
Which I tell people all the time, that was an interesting story because I looked at that as probably one of my best education in terms of business. I was really good friends with our manager, and he wanted to groom me to be, to grow within.
In that corporation.
So I wasn't even, I think it was just turning 17 when I became the assistant manager of the store.
Wow.
And
so you spent from 12 to 17 working at KFC?
No, from 14.
14. Okay. 14
my first job, I actually worked cleaning a church.
Wow. So you were a hustler since the beginning.
Yeah.
Are you only child?
No.
Mm-mm. Okay.
But I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest, okay.
So, I'm the oldest, so my mother gave me a lot of responsibilities because she worked her entire life and worked long hours, multiple jobs. So I would be the one that had to pick up my sister, especially my sister, because my sister was the youngest.
Yeah.
My brother, not so much. My brother and I are only a year and 1 month apart. So a couple of months apart, but I really didn't have to take care of him as much as I did with my sister.
Got you.
My sister's much younger than us.
And your parents are both Puerto Ricans?
Puerto Rican, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do they do or used to do?
My mother owned a salon for all her life. She had multiple salons.
Business owners.
Business owner. My mother was a business, but not a good business owner.
Really? Why?
She was horrible.
Why?
You know, in hindsight being 2020, she was not a good, very good hairstylist.
Okay.
but she was
that
not.
That tends to happen. So like sometimes they're artists, you know, they're good
artists.
at what they
My
do.
mother's an
Yeah.
artist, but she could not manage. I mean, we had no money because she
Yeah.
didn't know how to manage.
Really?
And she didn't
Even
know-
though she was a business owner,
Yeah.
like there was some money. Because
There was no money.
Oh my God.
That's why I started working young.
We're in Chicago.
This is in Puerto Rico and in Chicago.
And in Chicago, too.
Because when we moved to Chicago, she worked for at a salon, but then she got her own. But she always did better when she was like the employee. Like she worked, because running the business is way different,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And she didn't know how to manage it. When we moved to Florida,
What year was that? And how old were
actually,
you?
I moved to Florida and I brought her with me.
Really?
Because I left the Marine Corps. I left the Marine Corps in '90, and we moved here. And that's another interesting story because we had no family in Florida.
In Florida.
None.
You still have family in Chicago?
We have family in Chicago, and family in Puerto Rico, but I didn't want to live any of those places. So I took back then it was a map. I took a map out, and I'm like, okay, this looks like cool
You're
spot.
kidding me. That's how you picked the place?
I picked the place, and it was funny because I saw Florida was in the center, but specifically Fort Lauderdale because I had just watched and I forget the name of a movie, and it was Fort Lauderdale Spring Break.
Fort Lauderdale. And that's what brought you to...
The name stuck in there, and I looked at it.
I remember that name.
I remember that name.
Oh my
Boom.
God. So the same way that finger could have fallen into Florida could have been anywhere.
It could have been anywhere. It could have been
would have been a
anywhere.
completely different
Yeah.
experience for you and your family.
Yeah.
Because I guess what I'm hearing is that you were responsible from your family at a very young age.
Correct.
And that was because of, you said your mom gave you a lot of responsibilities.
Tons. Yeah, because she worked. My dad was, unfortunately, had lots of issues. And
He wasn't present.
he was present, but he wasn't present.
Gotcha.
You know, he wasn't an active father. He had a drinking problem, was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were in constant conflict.
Yeah.
And my dad was, when I say he was in the house, but he wasn't in the house.
Yeah.
I don't, and my brother, and I can't speak for my sister, but I know for sure my brother. My brother's very close to my dad.
Really?
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't close to my dad. Because I was always with my mom.
Of course.
Helping my mom, helping.
So the same family environment that could have caused for you to use it as an excuse, to not work on yourself or even taking care of your family, it did all the opposite.
The opposite.
It means that you took the role and responsibility of taking care of the family. I guess not only financially through jobs and hustles, like you're saying, at a young age, but also literally, wherever you went, you brought them with you.
I brought them with me. My interesting enough, the first person that came when I got to Florida, the first person that I brought over was my sister.
Okay.
Then I brought my mother over, and then my brother came after. And then almost all my family now lives in Florida. When my grandmother passed away, some of my uncles came, although they don't live in Florida anymore, but some of them came. I got cousins here.
Yeah.
Once I got here, everybody started coming.
Gotcha. That's interesting. That's an interesting. First time that I hear somebody that falls into Florida. Usually people are drawn to Florida because of the weather or other reasons, but it's funny that it was because of that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Marine Corps. How do you get to the Marine Corps? What was the decision and what drove you there?
Okay, that's another. The Marine Corps, I never intended to be part of the military period.
Really?
It never even crossed my mind. But I mentioned I wasn't good in school, right? And I put all my eggs in my one basket, which was to go to University of Puerto Rico. Didn't get accepted.
Really?
So,
but wait, you were in the U.S.
No, I'm in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
I'm in Puerto Rico, and senior year,
okay.
and I was the president of my class. I was like my senior year, the year that you really should be. It's really your junior year where you start applying for everything.
Yeah, thinking more through where your future is heading.
Yeah,
Good.
and you're supposed to be applying your junior year. I didn't. I waited to my senior year, and I blew my senior year because I was in so many different activities. Planning the graduation. I mean, I was all over the place, working full time, sleeping in my first class because I worked. I closed the store, so I would get out of the store about 1 or 2 in the morning. By the time I got home, got showered and all that, to get up early. My first class, I slept my whole first class. Point being, I blew that year, and I only applied to one school, which was the University of Puerto Rico. Didn't get accepted, and my brother, who had already planned on going and joining the Navy, or actually he really planned on the Marine Corps, but he ended up going into the Navy, had to go take the ASVAB, which is a test you have to take to get in. And he goes, hey, Fernando, I need you to come with me. I'm nervous, I'm scared. I said, sure, I'll go with you, right? So I go with him, and I meet the recruiter, and the recruiter goes, hey, this is gonna be a long test. So, you either can go back to home and come pick them up a couple later, or take the test with them. I said, sure, I'll take the test with them.
That was a great recruiter tactic.
Yeah, great, dude. To this day, I said, this guy, I mean.
They're good.
So, anyways, I take the test. I ended up scoring better than my brother. My brother was underage.
I imagine he tried to, he got prepared for the test. You didn't.
I didn't even, like I said, military didn't even cross my mind.
Wow.
Nothing. And but my brother was 17, so he took the test.
How old were you?
I was 18 at the time. I had just turned 18. My brother still needed a whole year, and in order to, when you're under 18, your parents got to sign. You can go into the Marine Corps, but your parents got to sign.
Okay.
My parents had not signed for my brother yet. In fact, my parents didn't even know that we were taking this test and doing anything. He didn't want to mention anything until he passed.
Yeah, it's like, this is the test I passed. This is what I want to do. Please sign here.
Yeah, but I take the test. The moment we get the results, the recruiters did not focus on my brother anymore. It was all on me.
Wow.
Because I can join right there.
Yes.
you know?
Wow.
And like life, I always said everything happens for a reason. And I take the test, I go back, I get the phone call, I pass the test. That's the same day I get my denial letter. And I'm like, what am I gonna do with my life?
Wow.
I'm not staying on the island because I'm not gonna work in Kentucky Fried Chicken all my life.
Yes.
I'm like, what am I gonna do? And I go visit the recruiter again, and he sold me. And I was gone.
Wow.
I was literally gone 2 months later.
Yeah. Wow. How did that turn out? I mean, from looking back now, how many years were you in the Marine Corps?
I did a total of 6. And best thing that ever happened to me.
Really?
Better than, I'm glad I didn't go to college.
Yeah.
It really built me to the man I am today for multiple reasons, but I'll focus strictly on the business side. So I mentioned my mother had no business sense.
Yeah.
My mother didn't teach me anything about finance.
Yeah.
No one in my family, no one except one aunt had money. And this is why I wanted to go to University of Puerto Rico, because she was the only one that had a college degree. She was a pharmacist. She's the only one that had money. So
you wanted to follow, obviously,
her steps, right? I'm like, I wanted to be a pharmacist, which, thank God I'm not a pharmacist. I would blow my mind.
I couldn't see that.
Yeah, I couldn't see myself doing that. But anyways, I wanted, because that's what I understood money to be, through her, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything, and I go to the Marine Corps, finish boot camp, get stationed in California, Camp Pendleton, California. At the time, most Marines were getting in trouble, getting kicked out of the Marine Corps for bouncing checks and not using money wisely.
Yeah.
People don't realize that writing a bad check, it's a crime.
It's a crime, yeah.
So, so they made me go to this financial class. And to this day, there was 32 people in the class. And I'm gonna follow back on the story you said about how I grew up and how I decided to take what I had to fuel me in a different direction where other people don't, using it as an excuse. But there was 32 people in this class. And Gunny Wilkinson, never forget the guy, teaching us finance, teaching us how to write a book, and he goes into investing. And he had already been in the Marine Corps for 22 years, had one more year left, he was going to retire, and he put up on, it was a PowerPoint, it wasn't a screen, and it didn't have that. It was a PowerPoint.
You're talking about still what, early?
This was
meets 90s?
No, this is in the 80s.
80s.
This is 1988.
Wow.
Yeah, this is 1988. He puts up there his financial statement. That's all that. And at that time, he owned 5 properties, rental properties.
Okay.
And he was investing a lot in the military and the US government. They have what's called deferred compensation, which is basically like a 401k. And he had it up there, and he had, the numbers were hindsight being 2020, it wasn't allowed, but for a young Marine who comes with no money, I was like, holy, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, of course.
You know? I'm like, I'm gonna stay in the Marine Corps the whole time, I'm gonna have a pension, I'm gonna do so. I'm thinking this way.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said, he goes, you have to take 10% of your money, put it into the deferred comp, and you have to buy real estate.
Yeah.
And he goes, don't, and I remember this because he goes, don't be an idiot like every other Marine and move into an apartment out in town because it's not cool to live on base and spend all that money on rent. He goes, buy an apartment out in town, live on base because it's free, and rent it out.
And rent that out.
So that got my wheels spinning. And then the guy next to me was this guy named Brian Hodges, a guy from Philadelphia, and we talked, and during the conversation, everybody asked, well, why did you join the Marine Corps? And his reason for joining the Marine Corps was because he wanted to own Subways.
He wanted to, he wanted franchises.
He wanted franchises.
Subway is one of the most popular, the biggest one, and probably one of the cheapest to get
Cheapest to get in, exactly. Yeah. Cheapest to get in. At that time, it only cost $5,000 to get into Subway.
Yeah.
So that's what he wanted to do, right? And him and I followed the career path together, and we got stationed in the same places together. He was a little bit more disciplined at that time than I was.
Discipline in all aspects, or your money?
And money. Discipline and money.
Okay.
So I was married, he wasn't, so I had to spend a little bit more, and my wife and I would go out once in a while, go to dinner. This guy would not leave the base. If it wasn't free, he's not doing it. And in reality, if you're in the military, you don't need anything.
Yes,
they give
that's
you
what
food.
I heard before.
Yeah.
I've heard people like going wealthy, just accumulating, being smart with their money that they make in the military.
Yes, housing's free, food is free, entertainment, like if you want to go bowling, to the movies, all that is free.
That is awesome.
That's all there. This guy took full advantage. And education, they gave it the free education. Awesome. He took full advantage. Anyways, going back to what you said about people see things differently, their perspectives differently, and they get things out of certain things differently. So for example, out of the 32 people in there, I was able to keep in contact for a long time. Not so much anymore, but for a long time, 20 of them, like we stayed friends and we talked, and we back then there was no cell phones, but we would write each other and all that. None of them, with the exception of Brian, became financially successful.
Wow.
Brian, and I still talk to him. Brian owns 32 Subways.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he moved forward with his plan.
That was his vision.
Wow.
He had a clear vision on that, and he moved forward on that, and he succeeded there.
Wow. And he went through it with the delay gratification, mentality.
Exactly.
It's like I will sacrifice and say no to a lot of things now to then get the bigger goal.
Exactly. And I look up to the guy because I was very good, meaning in terms of buying real estate and following the plan, right?
Yeah.
We have in the Marine Corps, we have a saying: you follow orders or people die. That gunny gave me the order to save 10%. and buy real estate, and I did exactly that.
I noticed that. Obviously, what I'm hearing is that Marine Corps, and most people do get their discipline from there. It's just natural. You got to be disciplined to be part of the group.
Yeah.
And also, what I'm hearing is, in your case, going back to the beginning of not being a good student, it wasn't necessarily because of a lack of skill. Maybe a lack of attention. You were you wanted to be doing a lot in a lot of things. It wasn't necessarily a lack of skill. Maybe it was a lack of direction. Maybe the Marine Corps brought you. Would you say that gave you that direction and discipline?
The Marine Corps gave me discipline. I had no discipline prior to the Marine Corps. So the Marine Corps gave me discipline, and school didn't interest me. Making money interested me.
Yes, right? And I was gonna say that too. What I've noticed is, and I tell that to a lot of people, to summarize, and most people are driven either by significant or money.
Yeah.
You know, usually when you say money, you think like, oh, you gotta be a greedy person. Like, no, it's not in a bad sense. It's just that if you're in business, just to be profitable and do with, and you see the power that money do, you don't need to have significance. You don't need the titles, the pat in the back. It's just to make money. That's why you're here. I personally think that I'm driven by money and all the good stuff that money can bring. In your case, what I'm noticing is from the story of the bank statements that the guys show, it's like that's what call you. Then you're on that. It's like she was a pharmacist, she was making money. I want to be a pharmacist. So you're driven by money and what money can get for you.
Well, I'm gonna go deeper into that because it's not necessarily money. It is the security that money brings.
Powerful.
So, as a child, not only as a child, but mainly more when I started realizing the importance of having money to survive.
Yeah.
That created a fear in me, and the fear of not being able to provide, not being able to survive.
Yeah.
And that fear came more towards my mother, right? My mother would, like I said, my mother worked hard, not financially smart, but she worked really hard to make sure we had what we needed. But my mother was always afraid, of not having enough.
Yes.
That's why she did what she did. I have that, and that mentality is the mentality that I have. It was that fear of not being able to provide, not only for me, because as an individual, it's easy to
It's
really,
easier, yeah.
It's
Especially
easier.
after going through the military. In the military, yes, you're taking care of the team, but you also have to be aware of yourself first.
Right.
So you got to take care of yourself first before even, being aware of your team and whatever task you got to do. So to your point, it's like, it's easier to navigate life by yourself, but you have the responsibility at your age,
Young age,
for your mom and your family in general.
So that's what money was like I said, was a driver, but the biggest driver for me was that fear.
Yeah.
That fear in not being able to provide. And I got married young. I got married at 18.
Really, wow.
So I got married very young. So now not only have to provide for me and my wife, but I got to provide for, and I had a kid young, I have to provide and make sure that my mother is being taken care of. Because the entire time I knew at some point, my sister's not going to take care of my mother. My brother's not going to take care of my mother. At some point, I was going to be financially responsible for my parents.
Yes.
Not just my mother, but my dad. My dad ended up dying young, but my
your mother.
My mother.
Because it's one of those things where, at least in that aspect financially and taking care of your family, and Ed Milet, he one of his speeches, he says that like you're the one. Wanted it or not, you're the one. There's always the one in your family that has to step up. It's their responsibility. And especially financially. It's not that your sister or your brother they don't want to. It's just that they might not have the resources at the time. They weren't exposed to the information that you were. It's not a lack of love, compassion. It's just that, financially, there's always one that has to take on that responsibility. And the fact that you use, your circumstances as fuel instead of excuses, going back to that, it is powerful. And
I'll wrap it up on this because it's interesting. if you were to talk to my sister, in particular, if you were to talk to my sister, she would give you a completely different version of our life. Completely different version. My sister's not. I mean, she's doing okay, but nowhere near where she could be. But she uses always uses the excuse of we're Latin, we're never gonna make it. You know,
which is the same circumstances that you have.
Same. We grew up in the same household.
Same.
And this is the biggest thing with my sister. My mother, she was the youngest, and she was the only girl. So she got to go to private school. My brother and I, we couldn't do that. She got to go to private school. Really, whatever my sister wanted, my mother would bend over backwards to give to my sister. So she got a little bit more than we got. But yet she's the one that feels that like
life wasn't fair.
Exactly.
And I know exactly what you mean. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of people, they don't get to realize that that the same reasons that could fuel you to do different. And it's crazy because what you say about the story of your dad being alcoholic is the same story as Ed Milet too. And when he described being the one, it's like the same reasoning that could be the excuse is also the reasoning that could fuel you. You mentioned, for example, being Hispanic. In your case, you're expanding your business to other markets. You were talking off cameras that you have so many deals going on, some buildings, construction, renovations in Colombia. So the fact of being Hispanic is opening the doors right now in a period where Colombia is huge right now in tourism.
Colombia's
it's a big
growing.
opportunity. It's growing a lot. So, okay, I got to learn a little bit where that drive come from. How do you get to? I know that you mentioned that your first exposure to real estate was that coach, back in the Marine that he mentions that, but how do you get to real estate? When do you acquire your first property?
Oh, I bought my first property very young. I was, I think 20.
Wow.
I was 20 when I got my first.
Married 18, bought a property at 20. How old were you when you have your first kid?
20.
20.
Yeah.
Only one kid?
Only one. We ended up, I wanted to have, I literally wanted to have a lot. But we were only blessed with one. My wife got pregnant 6 times, and Brian was the only one that survived. I call him, and I tell him all the time, I'm like, dude, you better do big things because you're the only one that survived. But anyways, so we only have one. But so I bought my first property at 20, and then every 3 to 4 years, buy another one. So back then, I was when I came to Florida, I switched from the military to government work.
Okay.
And I still didn't have the visions that I have today. I was still looking for that security because if you do 20, 30 years in the government, you get a pension.
Yeah.
Right?
So you were you were going after that security.
I still need it was difficult for me to let go of that. Let go of the fact that I need security. I need something.
Would you say that back then it was money driven, but more than having a lot, it's more the constant and not dependent on something?
Yeah, like I said, I'll go back. It was the fear of not having and the need for security. So I needed those two. I had a government job, which was safe, right? I didn't pay a lot, but it was a safe job, steady income. I knew if I put in the time, I'm gonna get a pension. But the discipline with my money, I knew that was important. I knew I needed to build that. And I knew that if I was, what's gonna help me with my pension, because this is what the gunny said. He goes, it's going to be a supplement. Buying real estate, it's gonna be the supplements that I need to live well in retirement. Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a big difference. You can have a pension and not live well because pensions are not that much money. People think it's a lot of money. It's not a lot of money. He goes, but if you have rental income coming in, and then you have your
retirement,
your pension, your 401k, which for us was the deferred comp, and rental income, you're going to live very well when you retire. And I got into government work early, so I knew, like I had the number.
Yeah.
I knew exactly when I was going to retire.
Wow.
And I knew exactly when I was going to feel financially secure, which is at age 38, which is 20 years from the time I got in.
Okay.
I ended up achieving that 2 years later at age 40.
Okay.
But at age I knew that if I do these things, just like Gunny Wilkinson did, by 38, I can feel safe, secure, right?
Safe.
So, and that was the projection, but I didn't consider myself a real estate investor. I had real estate, but I didn't know
So
that.
when you got to that point, fast forward of government, you started at 20, so it was total 18 years, 18 to 20.
No, at 20 years.
20 years, yeah. It ended up being 20 years to get that security. How many properties did you acquire during that period?
So by the time I hit 38, it was 5 or 6 properties.
So not many, which is
Not many.
Yep.
Not many. But it was, and I tell people all the time that I work with now.
More than most people, obviously.
Yeah. I tell people now that I work with, for me, the magic number is 5.
Mm-hmm.
With 5 properties, the rental income you get from 5 properties that are paid off, they have to be paid off, that are paid off, you're set.
Yeah.
You, like that secure feeling, you're set, you're done. You need those 5, right? That rental income is going to be more than enough for you to live well.
To cover for the necessities like housing, cars, insurance,
right.
Food,
Yeah. So you're good. So that was my magic number. Now, from I think I was 37. I think it was 37 when I opened the gym. The gym is when I got my true financial lesson.
So it ended up being a gym,
a
completely
gym.
outside of real estate.
Yeah.
When you say financial lesson, in what aspect?
And learning. So when I opened the gym for 2 reasons. I opened the gym out of the passion. I opened a CrossFit gym. Myself and Steve Bowser were the first 2 true CrossFit gyms in Broward County.
Wow.
Yeah, we were not the first affiliate. There was a couple of affiliates, but those affiliates were operating out of the garage. Myself and Steve Bowser were the first 2 affiliates to open in Broward County, or gyms. And when I opened it for the passion of CrossFit and the passion of fitness, but I also opened it because now I'm at that age I'm getting ready to retire, to leave government work.
Yes.
And I wanted something else
to focus on, because
Right.
what I'm hearing is, even until that point, 38, 40 years, you didn't have any business experience.
No.
You invested in real estate, which is smart, but not necessarily business experience.
No.
So the gym was what allowed you to get something to do after coming from government work,
Right.
and actually experience what a business truly is.
Right. I wanted to be my own boss. I was tired of working for people.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be my own boss. And I had a little bit of administrative knowledge in terms of running a business through inventory, through bookkeeping when I was in Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
So I couldn't run a business.
Yeah.
So I put those 2 things together, opened the gym, but within a year, I immediately realized I'm never going to be wealthy running a gym because you're limited.
Yes.
So
you're limited on a location, because obviously people go to a location to work out. You're limited in amount of membership. Like obviously if you are limited to a physical space, there's just so much that subscriptions that you can sell. So that was the eye-opener for you.
That wasn't a big eye-opener for me because I'm like, you can make a decent living running a gym.
Yeah, especially if you're passionate about, if you're going to be present the whole time.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed too. At some point I was actually going to buy one. I do CrossFit too, and during COVID, the gym that I was working, it was going to close down.
Which gym?
It was called a smaller gym. It's called One Pulse. There were
One Pulse.
You know them?
Yeah. Listen, at one point I knew every affiliate.
Really? Yeah.
At one point I knew not only every affiliate, I knew all the owners. Yes. I mentored. I worked for CrossFit.
Really corporate.
I was a red shirt, and not only was I a red shirt, but I also there was a certification called CrossFit Endurance that was ran by Brian McKenzie that I was part of it. But yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
No,
I traveled. That was my first taste of really traveling in private life, outside of government work.
Traveling outside of the
U.S. I had all of South America.
Really?
I certified. CrossFit Bogota. I certified all those instructors for CrossFit Bogota, which was the first affiliate in Colombia. I certified them. CrossFit Forenza.
So you're very familiar with it.
Yeah, very. I was part. Like I said, I lived and breathed CrossFit for a while. But
that's crazy.
But to continuing the story on when I realized that I had to do one or two things, either open more affiliates in order to make real money.
Yeah.
Or I had to go into what a lot of people did at the time, like CrossFit New England, and do online coaching. Okay. I experimented with online coaching, but I didn't get a satisfaction with it. I like the interaction.
Yes.
So I didn't get a satisfaction from the online coaching. And the other thing I realized with both is I like my freedom. When you're a gym owner, you have no freedom.
Yeah.
You
gotta have like a very good structure and people that you trust.
Yes.
To be.
But even with the structure, because I had great coaches, but a coach is just that, a coach.
Yeah.
I needed to find a good number 2 person to do the operation side of the house.
Got you.
Which at the time I didn't find that. But I knew that was the key component. So that's when I'm like, what can I do that I have passion for? And I found this by mistake, but what can I do that I have passion for, that I don't have any limitations on my growth, any limitation or no caps.
No caps, yeah.
In terms of income.
Yeah.
So in that process, I had bought a property, which is the current property that I live on, that had a warehouse because I wanted to open my second gym. That had the warehouse. So I did that, but within that property, I have multiple units, and I Airbnb'd one of the apartments, and I Airbnb'd one of my properties.
So the properties that you already had acquired and had as a long term, you just switched to Airbnb. How was that?
Right. I switched to Airbnb. This is in 2014. Brand new.
Yeah.
Like fucking nobody knew.
Yeah.
Very few people knew about Airbnb.
Airbnb, wow. And that was pretty much the other day. So it's crazy. I'm noticing a trend here. So you were one of the first ones in CrossFit as an industry, and then one of the first one, which is a successful industry now and type of workout, and Airbnb as well.
Yeah.
Pioneer within the industry.
Yeah, and that experience with those 2 units, it was like, okay, no, this is it.
Really?
And I'm like, this is it. And I went.
It was that because of the money. You saw that.
Not just the money, the freedom. They weren't. I was making money on these properties.
Yeah.
I was making money on the properties, and it wasn't taking a lot of my time.
How? Because you're still managing yourself, I imagine, even though it was two properties. How wasn't taking?
And in terms of me physically having to be there, it took a lot of my time, like
coordinating the
cleanings and all that.
And stuff.
And back then I had no softwares, I had no systems, I have nothing.
Yeah.
So it took me a lot of time. I spent a ton of time on this phone. This is when I realized this tool is the greatest tool ever invented for an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So it took some time, but anyways, I realized, man, I can be, because I was at that time when I opened both, I ended up going for work, ended up going to Europe.
Yeah.
And I was in Europe for a couple of months, but I was operating everything out of my phone.
On your phone.
So that's when I realized this is it.
Location. So you experience the location freedom. So at the beginning, it was more security.
Yeah.
Being able to have some sort of sustainable income. That's why you went to the government to get the retirement. You started acquiring properties 5 or 6 by the age of 40. That gave you the income to have that security that you were looking for. But then the question was, okay, I want to do some, obviously 40, anybody that can retire and have a steady income that covers the basic necessities, that's a big accomplishment itself. But then it's like, okay, I got to do something with my life. Obviously, Fernando being Fernando, it's like I cannot stay quiet and just that. I need something. You went into the gym. The gym taught you that business is different. There was, even though you mentioned something interesting, you said, I noticing that there was a cap. And it's crazy because we get into business, some of us, especially us, I come from the sales background, you know, working for a corporate, selling, there's always a cap. There's always so much that you can sell of a product working for a corporation. If it's not the product itself that limits you, it's the amount of accounts that they give you, the areas, geographic area. There's always that cap.
There's always a cap.
And if you're always like a top producer, it's like you notice that. It's like, man, I'm hitting the number, I'm making the money, but there's a cap. I want more, and I have the capability of doing more. So we get out of corporate to, you know, not have a cap, but then could fall into a business where you notice that there is a cap. And if you don't want that cap, it's gonna take a lot of work. In the business, in the gym industry, it's like opening a massive amount of locations to be able to make, you know, a significant amount of money. And that's a lot of work. So you notice right away, you needed something that can give you that location freedom.
Right.
It wasn't no longer a security freedom, is more a location freedom. And then you got those 2 properties. How you went from 2 properties to now over 100?
By taking a lot of risk. So I went and 2014, 15, and 16, the progress was slow, but it was starting to pick up. I got my real estate license. I was doing, back then, anybody who had a license was making money.
Yeah.
So I was making a lot of money in sales and using that money to purchase more property.
Okay.
So anything that I made in real estate, I never spent it on me or anything. It was mainly back into acquiring more
So
properties.
you did real estate, like traditional sellers and buyers back in 2015.
15, 16, and 17.
Wow, that was the other day.
Yeah.
Pretty much the other day.
Yeah. And I became the top producer in my office.
Really?
A couple of years in a row. And really doing it while still juggling a lot of other things, right?
Because you still had the gym.
I still had the gym.
Never closed down the gym.
I never closed down the gym. I still had the gym. I didn't retire to 2018. I was still working full time.
And later I want to know what retirement looks like for you.
Yeah, I still was working full time, and I was doing real estate. I was selling properties, listing properties.
Yes.
But I was really focused on, and I got lucky because I knew by this time I'd already studied, I did a lot of stuff. I knew what an investment property is. Most people have no clue what that is. Even people that call themselves investors have no idea what a true investment is.
Yes.
So I knew what a true investment was.
Yes, and when you say investment, is real estate in general or short rental?
No, real estate in general.
Okay.
Real estate.
You became a student of the industry.
A student of the industry. If you go to my office, I probably say half of my bookshelves is on
real estate.
On real estate and investing and learning what construction cost is. All that stuff. I studied that.
Yes.
Lived and breathed that stuff, and I knew what a true investment is. And then I started acquiring property after property. And I took a lot of risk because, again, the short-term rental game was brand new. People didn't really understand it.
Like anything new, it was the market disruptor, like no difference than Uber.
I kept hearing, oh, they're going to shut you down.
The laws are going to change.
The laws are going to change. I kept hearing all that stuff.
Yes. Which we still hear those, you know what I mean?
You still hear it.
Still this day.
You still hear it, but so being in government, especially being on law enforcement side, the one thing you have to understand and really look at is case law. What is case law, right?
Instruct me, what is case law?
So case law is precedents. So for example, a government agency can put a law, but if that law doesn't have precedent or doesn't abide by current case law, which is what, like the Supreme Court is the mother of all case laws, right? They interpret what other courts do and say, no, you were right or you were wrong.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So there's case law in real estate that says a government cannot restrict, cannot prohibit, they can restrict, but can't prohibit you from operating or using your home as you want.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
They can add restrictions. That's why we have code enforcement that can say you can't do this, you can't do that. But they can never tell you, you can't rent this out.
Yeah.
You can't, there's non-government agencies that can do that, like HOA.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? This is why I'll never buy an HOA.
HOA, yes.
So, because HOA has more power than the government.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
So, I would never buy an HOA. But anyways, that's another story. But
or if you, the only HOA will be the one that you handle yourself. Like
yeah,
you
we
want to
do.
be your own HOA.
Yeah, like I do, right? Like I take over properties and I'm the HOA.
Yeah.
So we have another model for that. But anyways, Miami Beach was the first city in Florida to try to ban short-term rentals.
Really?
It went all the way to the Florida Supreme Court and said, no, you fucking can't do that. You're wrong. So they reopened it. Now they added some restrictions, but they reopened it. Cannot ban it.
Yeah.
So, and they now reinforce that through other legislations in Florida and in other parts of the country has been reinforced. So the total ban of short-term rentals will never happen, right?
Yeah.
Again, they can add some restrictions, like some cities add some crazy restrictions that I would stay away from. For example, they'll limit how many times you can rent it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, in short-term basis. So anyways, that happened. So that I realized, okay, they can never take this away. But there's other factors. Like for example, I did not explode until April of 2020. What's April 2020?
Wow, yeah, COVID.
COVID.
Yes.
COVID.
Wait. So how many units by then?
By then, I think I had 14 properties.
14 units.
15 properties.
Yourself?
Yeah.
Only yourself?
Yeah.
So we're talking about less than 3 years ago, during one of the craziest times in this generation, it's when your business exploded.
It's like, Grant Cardone likes to say the 10X rule.
Yeah.
I freaking 10X that.
Yeah. Why and how? If you have to, I know that a lot had to go into it. How? Why?
So this is what happened. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit. In 2019. 2019, I was aggressively making acquisitions. I knew certain things that I needed to, like for example, I would contract the cleaning to a company called Dragonfly. It was owned by two beautiful young ladies, one of which is now working for me. She works for me. But I realized that I wanted to bring everything in-house and even profit from other people's work. So when I was contracting it out, I really wasn't really making that extra money on the cleaning side.
It was simpler and easy, but
it was easier because I could just leave it to someone. But I lost two things. I lost the ability to make extra money, and I lost full control.
Control too, yeah.
Right. So I ended up buying that company. So that was the first company I ended up buying.
A cleaning company.
A cleaning company.
Yep.
And then the same thing, I realized I can do the same thing with pest control because all my properties need to have pest control. So I realized I'm paying this company X so much money for pest control when I can hire two people to do the pest control and make that money and offer a better service to my clients.
Yes.
Because my clients were paying those companies pest control, and I realized I don't know. Do you have pest control?
Yeah, I mean, I have a guy.
Okay, and he charges you what monthly?
It's a super. I do it every couple months.
Oh, every couple. So most people do it monthly.
Yes.
And they'll pay anywhere between $75 to $125, and they'll do it every couple of months.
Yeah.
So we do it. We charge our homeowner or client $50, and we take care of it monthly.
So subscription.
Huh?
It's a subscription.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
subscription. It's $50 a month.
Wow.
And we fumigate every month, and we target. So for example, summer, what do we get in summer here? We get a lot of sugar ants.
Yes.
So we treat that, and we make sure that your property stays without termites, because that's Florida and every property,
Yes,
every single property will have termites
9 out
if
of
they
10.
don't treat, if they don't get treated. So we were to provide an extra service, a better service to our clients.
Wow.
And then the last thing I did was with the landscaping company. I'm like,
So you acquire
I
landscaping.
acquired that. So the three things I acquired in 2019: landscaping, pest control, and cleaning.
And how many properties you had?
At that time, about 14 to 15 properties.
Only 14 and 15, and you already acquire those properties, first of all, with the intention of being more efficient and save money on your own properties, but also like applying the same concept on other industries, because those services can be offered outside of your own circle.
Right.
So
Right.
you acquire a cleaning company, pest control company, and then landscaping, which you currently own.
Right.
What else?
But from the short-term rental business, that's it. But I also did it again because I wanted to provide a better service.
Yeah.
Because when you contract something out, you're not controlling that. You can go there, and we would go there and look, and we were constantly having issues with people not showing up.
And you want to. This is a business where you want to have as much control to make sure that everything, because you're in the hospitality.
I'm in the hospitality. People think I'm in the real estate business. I am not in the real estate business. I am in the hospitality business.
Yes.
And you have to, like regular real estate management, it doesn't matter when the grass gets cut. It could be high for a couple of days, then you can cut it. And the short-term rental business, no, everything needs to be pristine.
Yes.
Everything needs to be looking good
As
all the time.
As an Airbnb, a short rental user, it's like you only stay there for a couple of days. And usually you're vacationing, you're going outside of your home, so you're gonna look for those qualities of whatever you pay for.
It's the little details, and I can go on a tangent on that. So I won't go on a tangent, but it's the little details that matter in the short-term rental, and it's not necessarily the action. So you can have a sub-optimized property, meaning your kitchen doesn't have to be fully updated, your bathrooms don't need to be fully updated, but they need to be freaking clean.
Yes.
Then the towels need to be folded a certain way. There's certain little details that you need to have in order to be successful. It's not necessarily.
You have to meet the basic requirements and standards that any hotel
has.
because that's your competition.
Yeah.
So it has to be at least whatever hotels. And the first thing that we do, we find something dirty, is we complain. at the hotel.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the very basic, and then everything that you can add up is more value that you can bring to it.
Exactly. So we did that. So then, and then in 2019, I started acquiring more. And in 2019, I expanded by managing other people's properties.
Okay.
So
2019
is when I
So
started.
you open your own management company.
I had the management company, but it was to manage my properties. Right? Then 2019, we opened up to manage other people's properties, and then I started acquiring. That side of the business started growing, and then COVID hits. Freaking March 2020. Never forget it.
Yes, which it was. Anyone in that specific industry got freaked out. Nobody was renting. I remember canceling an Airbnb that I had booked. Everybody did.
So this is how I'll give you what heart attack I had. At that time, between my properties and the properties I'm managing, I think we had like 30-something properties. Calendar, every property was at least 90% occupied. In 2 days, I went from 90% occupied to 10.
Wow.
So I'm looking at, I'm sitting in my office looking at cancellation, to cancellation, to cancellation, to cancellation.
That's absolutely nothing that you can do.
And there's nothing you can do. But at the time they said it was going to be 2 weeks. We're only going to be shut down 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, March is done, but my April was full. My June was full. My July was full. So I'm like, okay, there's nothing we can do. I lost. We're going to lose money. And March, no problem. And March is a big month, big grossing month for us. Okay, no problem. But then 2 weeks go by. 3 weeks go by. And I'm like, on that third week, I'm like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, there was no end in sight.
Yeah.
Although I was like, man, I have to do something. So I came up with the idea. I remember looking at I'm like, how much cash do I have?
Yeah, looking at the number every day.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't anything else to do.
Right. I'm looking at how much cash I have. I called 2 of the mortgage brokers that I deal with. I'm like, hey, I need to borrow money. How much money can you lend me? He goes, right now I'll give you whatever you want because nobody's buying. So I'm like, and I had a couple of houses that were paid off. I'm like, refi this. I accumulated about 1.8 million, and then I picked up the phone. I called everybody that I can find within Fort Lauderdale, within Broward County, that had a short-term rental, and I told them, do you want to sell?
You were in the negative.
I was in the negative.
You were losing. You didn't know how this was going to lay down. Nobody knew what was going to happen. And instead of like taking a step back, just waiting, you went.
I'm like, this is an opportunity to do one thing. All these people that got short-term rentals is to buy them, and then in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to buy them, and if I have to rent them long-term, I rent them long-term.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try to buy these pennies on the dollar. So that was the first thing I did, right? And then the second thing I did, because on one of the properties that I called, it was a management company. It's a small, I won't say their name, but it was a small management company. They had in their portfolio 15 properties.
Okay. Short rentals.
Short-term rentals. They had 15 properties that they managed for other people. They had 2 of their own, and then the rest of them were managed for other people. And the wife picked up. He goes, oh, my husband's not here, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we want to sell one of the properties, and we don't know what we're going to do with the business. Are they going to close down?
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's have lunch. And this is when we couldn't leave.
Yeah.
I brought them to my property.
Yeah.
And they came to my property. I'm like, listen, I want to buy the whole thing. I want to buy your portfolio, and I want to buy your properties.
Yeah.
And that was the first short-term rental company that I acquired.
Wow.
And like I said, and then I bought. So I went from March all the way to the end of the year to 57 properties. I think it was 57 or 58 properties. And I was like, my wife's like, you're gonna bankrupt this. I'm like, we're either gonna be bankrupt or we're gonna have fucking money. One or the other. I'm like, at the end of the
it's the only way.
Yeah, I'm like, at the end of the day, I said, don't stress about it, because at the end of the day, what did I have? I have a safety net. I had my pension.
Yeah.
I said, at the end of the day, I got a pension. So
fall back to the security.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn from that experience, and it's crazy. You remember that I told you that I was about to buy that gym. It was literally about that time because of COVID was about to close. I made an offer. It was gonna to close down, but it was with the same mentality. Like, I knew that COVID was gonna be temporary. I knew that buying the gym was the best decision. Nobody was going to the gym, but I could buy the gym, just wait, and then reopen. I already bought it at a good price. That was mentality. The only difference is that I wasn't too aggressive like you. I didn't take risks like you do. And that is powerful, because how many people do that? They go all in.
Yeah.
Even though you had your pension, like, still having all of that costs so much to build, you gotta have a very strong stomach to risk it all, bro. Years and years.
I look back now and I'm like, man.
You know what I mean?
You're like nuts, you know.
That is, but it's powerful because it's like we got to have, maybe not to that extent, but we have to have some of that and take risk. Like I'm literally learning because I was in a similar position, a very much lower scale, and I still, didn't take the risk.
Yeah, I think if you want to, not think, I'm very confident that if you want to have major impact, you got to take major risk.
Yes.
High risk, high
and get
reward.
to that point where it has to hurt to get that big breakthrough and jump. So if you want one of those big jumps, you have to go really all in at some point, in some way, in some part of your life.
Here's what it does as well. It especially for those that don't have discipline, it gives you discipline. Because if you don't work, man, you're done.
Yes.
Like that, your bills are not getting paid.
Yeah.
So you go into that survival mode. Listen, I have to work. If I don't work, my family's not eating today.
Yeah.
So it forces you into that survival mode. The property that I own is another example of a big risk the one that I live on now. A big risk that I took that no one understood. Everyone told me I was nuts. My wife cried for months. Literally cried.
Really?
For months.
Thinking that was the situation. That was after all of this?
This is before. This is in the beginning. This is
You probably have cried out loud, man.
Yeah, this is like in the beginning, and I tell you, I'll try to make this very, very brief. The property that I bought I had the vision of what it was going to look like, but it wasn't what it is today. It was in very, very bad shape, almost unlivable. We didn't have the money to buy it. I mortgaged, and not only mortgaged the house we were living in, but I borrowed the money. I borrowed $30,000 that I needed to pay back in a month to make this deal work. And we closed on it. First of all, my wife didn't think I was going to get it. No bank is going to give you the money for that. It's never going to happen. So she, when I mentioned it to her, she was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. When I came home, I said, hey, I closed on this. She said, what? I'm like, I closed on this, and we're moving out of this house. But I had to sell the house. And we're moving out of this house. And I take her to the property. She walked into the gate and immediately started crying. And she's like, I don't understand. I can't believe this. This is never going to work. And then if you ask her today, the best thing we ever did was get that property.
Yeah, she's super
best
happy.
Best thing.
Wow.
The property alone nets me $15,000 a month. So
That's where you live?
that's where I live. Yeah.
Okay. And why?
You haven't been to my property?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you gotta come to my property.
Is
I
that
call
where
it the
the gym
compound.
is?
That's where the gym is.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta come to the property. We call it the David compound because it's truly a compound.
Wow.
It's 3 acres. I have my warehouse there. I have a gym there. So the warehouse is big enough that I rent space in the warehouse. The supplies for my business are there.
Yeah. And it nets you 15 grand.
15 grand. I net 15 grand every month.
Talking about security, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So that property alone. So she, now she looks back and goes, yeah, this is the best thing ever.
Wow.
It literally has been my best investment ever.
Yes.
But
the house where you.
But it was a lot of sacrifice. When I say, I didn't let my wife know this.
Yeah.
But when I say that I cried, that I had sleepless nights, it's an understatement.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna make this.
Yes.
I said, I don't think I'm gonna be able to pull this off. Man, but we worked, and then it took us a little longer than I wanted to. My wife and I lived we went from a 3,200 square foot house in Davie to living in a 1-bedroom, a small section of the property that would leak when it rained.
Oh my God.
That we would flood as we were coming in.
40-something years old, right?
No, this was not long ago. This was in 2014, I believe. 15.
my
It wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
We were in a good position.
Yes.
And I almost bankrupted us getting this property. But I knew that, and I was confident that it will pay off.
Yeah.
I was confident. Even the other realtor that it was listed from another realtor. Even him, we go to lunch one day. We're sitting down. He goes, "She won't buy this property."
Even himself.
Even himself was telling me that.
Wow, I got so much. I do feel that we need a second part to continue because you now travel the world. You travel 3 weeks out of the 4th every month. You spend somewhere else, and so you have that location freedom. You have that security freedom that you were looking for. You have that financial freedom. You have the location freedom. So it is powerful, and it wasn't one moment in your life that got you there. Like multiple breakthroughs in situation. Even at this, at your age, after securing that job. Or that retirement that you were looking for, you were still taking risks. And wow, there's so much. And the fact that you mentioned that you cried, sleepless night, even though you didn't show that face to your wife or anybody around you, it's powerful that you're sharing that because I might see you now and all the stories that I hear from you, that all the risks that you take now and you took before, it's like, no, Fernando's fearless. It's like there's nothing that can stop this guy. But the fact that you're vulnerable and honest to share that you still have those things, because we all do, is fearless is it doesn't exist.
I don't know about again, sometimes being naive is very helpful. Because I am fearless, and when you're naive, you're even more fearless.
Yeah.
But when you like now, I don't know if I would. I know for sure I won't be taking those kind of risks anytime soon. Because right now I'm in a stage of financially, where currently I am in my life. I don't need to take those massive risks anymore.
It gets to a point that you don't.
You're right. Although, like I said.
More calculated.
Yeah. Although people still, say, then you're crazy for buying properties in Colombia,
but
right?
But still, you already know your numbers. You became a student.
Yeah.
You already understand in business. You already have more probably. This is just analyzing from your standpoint, from the outside. Your safety net is bigger now before making any.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Like for example, the hotel I bought or got part ownership in Colombia. It was a risk, but it's money that I can lose.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it's not for me, and financially, if that thing goes under,
you're still fine.
I'm still fine.
Yeah.
So because people are like, oh man, that was crazy. You're taking a big risk because of the government there. They went leftist with Petro. This is why that opportunity came about, because a lot of Colombians were and still are afraid that it's going to be another Venezuela if Petro gets reelected. So there is a risk there. But for me, it's not that much of a risk because, like I said, now I have a much bigger safety net.
Yes, which is awesome.
Yeah, and so I don't have those sleepless nights I had like when I bought that property.
You already pay your dues.
Yeah, I paid my dues. Exactly. Good example.
That is amazing. I got so much from it. Again, I really want to have a second part because I want to know. You travel the world so much. I mean, you must have so many experiences. I like to travel too, and I want to get a second part. About that, of how it's life after you accomplish all of that, and the location freedom. Specifically, financial and location freedom, what can bring to your life. This was so much for myself, and I know that a lot of people are gonna get a lot of valuable information, man. So I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate you. So if anybody wants to reach out to you for the management services, Airbnb, which I don't know no one else in my circle that does what you do to your capacity, to your knowledge and understanding of that industry. So what's the best contact to get you?
I'm on Instagram, probably the best way to get at me, which is Fernando at Premium Services. I'm on YouTube, same handle for my Twitter. So any one of those social media aspects.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, buddy.
That was awesome.